Have you guys heard of the similar problem with like language use and like with like therapy speak, where people are saying like I have trauma, and it's like, oh, you just don't like doing that,
right?
Or like this is triggering. It's like, no, it's annoying,
right?
It's like there's legitimate clinical words for things like trauma,
right?
For things like triggering, not
or people that are diagnosing themselves with autism
or
with
ADHD
and stuff like that, like especially through TikTok, through things.
Like I have ADHD. It's like, no, you watch TikToks for 7 hours a day and it's rot your brain. That's not ADHD.
Right. And then you watch other TikToks where someone who may or may not have ADHD is telling you what their symptoms are. And you took those just like a fucking mom who goes on WebMD and is like, oh, shit, I have cancer or my kid is going to die or whatever. It's the same thing. If you're already in like in a depressive state, and then you see a bunch of things that you can apply to yourself, you're like, oh, well, I guess that's just fucking it then. I just have ADHD, or I just have autism, or I'm fucking schizophrenic, or whatever. You know, when that's not, it's not helpful in general, and it's denigrative to you and the way that you're going to try and live your life. If you don't have one of those mental illnesses and you're trying to treat yourself as though you do, you're probably fucking yourself up in the brain by doing that. You know.
Yeah, it's if you've ever known somebody that's has, we'll just say, hypochondriac tendencies, it's like that but like on a mass scale.
Yeah,
and it's not a good sign of health for the overall society when a lot of people are falling into those same games and using that same language. When the Evergreen College thing went down years ago, that was when the communists took over the college.
Yeah,
I'll just use that. Now I'm going to be in my own head all day as I
defeated my own point?
I'm like, shit. But like they were, they basically had a struggle session with like the president of the college.
Struggle sessions.
And they were like, you're microaggressing, like all these terms that they were just using to just use as like attack vectors. And so they become multi-use tools at that point. So you can use them on yourself to kind of put yourself in whatever kind of to help support whatever identity you're choosing to identify with, whether it's like, well, I have ADHD, or like Tourette's was a real big one because TikTok started, like, there was a trend going around that made a bunch of people like doing,
they're like ticking,
they're doing ticks, and then all of a sudden they can't actually stop, and then you like really fucked yourself over. But
and that's exactly what I'm talking about.
Yes. And
shouldn't be doing that.
You shouldn't be doing that, dude. You're going to pay the price.
Deborah says trauma has become another safe space term, and I think that's a very good point. That it's especially because it's the next generation after us. Our generation was the first ones that had kind of these defined like social safe spaces on campuses and stuff like that. Where like you can go here and people's language is restricted, but they can't say certain things. Conversations are restricted so that people can feel comfortable here. There is much research now indicating that these things are not helpful to developing brains. To remove them from potential dangers, quote unquote, from language, from discussion is not a healthy thing in them trying to develop intellectually. That expanse.
And just as a person, dude, you need adversity to strive through. That's what sharpens you and hones you as a better human being. And without any kind of struggles, you're just a soft sponge that's going to continue to just say, somebody looked at me weird on the train, and now I'm traumatized for the rest of my life.
Precisely, and that's what I was just going to say, is that expansion, I think, is at the very... I'm going to say an idea because I don't have evidence to back this up, but it makes a lot of sense to me that next step is going to be an expansion of those safe spaces to now my life is a safe space. I have trauma related to this. You cannot discuss these things around me. You cannot say these things in front of me. You cannot do these things because it triggers me. It causes me trauma to witness these things because of whatever I've dealt with, even though the root was a benign social situation that made you uncomfortable. You know,
which is life.
You don't have any right to be uncomfortable. You don't have a right to dictate other people's speech because you don't like the way that it makes you feel. These are not rights that you have. You have the right to ask somebody to not say these things or to do whatever.
But that was rude.
Yeah, you don't have. Yeah, when your rights, quote unquote, begin to involve other people's enforced actions, this is no longer a right that you have. This is not, your rights do not compel other people to do certain things. That is not how rights work.
Yeah.
So it's
the minute you have to compel somebody to do something else, it's not a right anymore.
Yes.
Done. That's the easiest way to figure out what's a right and what's not a right.
Yeah.
What's the chat got going on
Trenton
over there,
says, "Oh, I feel this one to the core." Deborah, we do not develop survival skills without adversity. 100%. Trenton, sorry, I triggered you, quote unquote. Well, you know Trenton. You know Trenton.
I do.
And you've met him a ton of times.
Yeah.
loose with what he says. He's a fucking clown. He
Big
says
fan.
things for. He's a shock jock. That's the best way to put this. He says shit that he knows is gonna get people to react because that's what makes him laugh. That's what's funny. It's not because he's a bad person. It's not because he really thinks any of the wild shit that he says. I'm his best friend. He fucks with me more than anybody else.
Of course.
It's just who he is as a person, you know. And I.